You can't manifest your desired reality if you're obsessed with being high frequency forever. Yet in today's spiritual community, there is a dangerous, toxic lie that has been repeated so often, it feels like truth. The idea that being spiritual means being high frequency all the time. If we're being brutally honest, most people throwing this phrase around don't even know what frequency really is. They post pictures of smoothies, walking barefoot on the grass, rubbing crystals, captioning it, "high vibes only." But let's pause. Is that really frequency? Or is that just a mood dressed up as metaphysics? From the very beginning, I want to tell you this. Throughout this message, I'm going to show you what frequency actually is, why you cannot manifest if you try to cling to a state of high frequency every second of the day, and how you can instead change your frequency forever. But before we go deeper, relax. Take a breath. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are exactly where you need to be to understand this truth. Because here's the problem. If you believe high frequency means feeling good all the time, you've already set yourself up for failure. You've built a trap that your own subconscious will enforce. The subconscious mind only accepts what it believes to be true as reality. And if you label every low as something wrong, you will unconsciously create more wrong. That's not spirituality. That's self-sabotage dressed as positivity. Let me be even clearer. Spirituality without the ability to influence and shape your reality is just vanity. What's the point of meditating, chanting, affirming, or trying to float above the world if none of it actually moves you into your chosen life? The irony is sharp. Chasing the appearance of high frequency doesn't get you closer to your desired reality. What does? Becoming the vibrational alignment of that reality itself. That means embodying the specific frequency that matches the life you actually want to live, not the mood you want to project to others. This is why I feel compelled to debunk some of the most dangerous beliefs the spiritual community has blindly accepted. The first is this shallow idea that high frequency equals good feelings. Yes, feeling good can be a side effect of higher awareness, but it is not the definition. If you confuse frequency with feelings, you end up chasing emotional highs, and in doing so, you go against the very rhythm of the universe. Reality itself is polarity, day and night, inhale and exhale, ebb and flow. Every attempt to suppress one pole in favor of the other only creates suffering because it denies the law of balance that governs existence. And when you resist the universe, you resist yourself. And when you resist yourself, you resist God. That resistance is the birthplace of suffering. So when you see people pretending to be in a permanent state of bliss, know this: they are at war with the truth of the universe. The truth is that your frequency is not a feeling. It is a repeated energetic signature. And in human experience, that repeated signature expresses itself as awareness. Awareness is not the same thing as constant happiness. Awareness is the lens through which you see reality, and the clarity of that lens determines the reality that unfolds around you. Here is the pivot I want you to grasp. If you build your reality on the law that feeling bad means I am failing, then every time you feel sadness, frustration, or heaviness, your subconscious will register it as wrong. And because there are no truths in reality other than what the subconscious accepts, your very judgment sets a new frequency in motion. That vibration builds momentum, turns into frequency, and inevitably crystallizes into reality. In other words, the lie of always be high will actually drag you lower, because it makes you a slave to your own emotions. Let me pause here. Because this is not about making you paranoid about every feeling you have. It is about correcting your perception. You are not meant to feel good all the time. No human being does. Not even the great spiritual teachers we hold as examples. Every master walked through struggle, shadow, and darkness. What made them radiant was not their ability to avoid the lows, but their ability to see through them. High frequency is not perfection, it is perception. And until you understand that, manifestation will feel like pushing against an invisible wall. This is where our journey begins. Not with the Instagram version of spirituality, not with the glittering mask of good vibes only, but with a deeper truth. Your frequency is your awareness. Your awareness shapes your reality. And only when you understand this will you be able to change your frequency forever. Let's start with foundations, because without foundations, every structure eventually collapses. Before we can even talk about manifestation, we need to clear away the fog and define what frequency really is. Most people throw the word around like it's just a vibe, a fleeting mood, a playlist, a smoothie, or a moment of sunshine on their face. They confuse frequency with a snapshot of emotion. But frequency is not a moment. Frequency is not a mood. Frequency is not even an emotion. At its essence, frequency is nothing more than a repeated energetic signature. Emphasis on repeated. One vibration on its own is just a point, a flicker, a spark. But when vibration continues, when it loops, when it builds momentum, it becomes a frequency. And every frequency, without exception, eventually manifests into reality. That is the unbreakable law. The ancients knew this long before science had the language for it. In the I Ching tradition, it is spoken of as the law of vibration. Hermetic philosophy says the same. Everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. What we call frequency is simply vibration that has become patterned, consistent, and enduring. And that pattern carries consequences, because whatever is repeated does not stay invisible. It crystallizes into form. Now let's bring this down into human terms. If frequency is a repeated energetic signature, how does that show up in us? We are, after all, infinite beings confined to finite bodies. The ocean of the divine poured into the fragile container of flesh and bone. So how does the infinite signature of energy express itself within our human experience? It comes through as awareness. This is the pivot that so many miss. Frequency is not about how you feel. It is about how you see. Your awareness is the translation of your energetic signature into perception. The way you notice, the way you interpret, the lens through which you filter reality, that is your frequency. And because awareness is what you carry into every moment, your frequency is not measured in bursts of happiness, but in the steadiness of perception you return to again and again. Think of your awareness like a pair of glasses. If the lenses are smudged, you stumble. You trip over things you didn't see. You bump into walls. You misinterpret shadows for monsters. This is low frequency. But when the lens is clean, when perception is clear, you can navigate reality with steadiness. That is high frequency. Not because you're smiling all the time, but because you are seeing reality as it is instead of through distortion. This is where the confusion in the spiritual community becomes so dangerous. Because if you think frequency is emotion, then you try to stay in good feelings forever. And when you inevitably feel sadness, anger, or heaviness, you panic. You judge yourself. You label it wrong. And by labeling it wrong, you reinforce the very vibration of wrongness, repeating it until it becomes a frequency that your subconscious accepts as truth. And as we said, every frequency becomes a reality. The danger here is subtle but profound. When you define frequency as emotional state, you make your inner world fragile. You become a yo-yo, tossed up and down by every shift in feeling. One day you're high, the next you're low, and your sense of power evaporates. But when you define frequency as awareness, you anchor into something stable. You can have a bad day and still hold a clear lens. You can feel sadness without turning it into a curse. You can feel anger without confusing it with failure. That shift changes everything. Let's deepen this with another metaphor. Think of vibration as steam and matter as ice. Both are the same substance, water, but in different states of vibration. Steam is subtle, intangible, hard to grasp. Ice is solid, tangible, easy to hold. In the same way, mind and matter are not separate but different vibrational states of the same energy. Mind is like steam, fluid, expansive, seemingly invisible. Matter is like ice, dense, solid, measurable. Manifestation, then, is simply the process of mind, steam, slowing into density until it crystallizes as matter, ice. What we call reality is just frozen imagination. And here is the crucial insight. Your awareness is the thermostat. Where you place it, how you sustain it, what you return to repeatedly, that sets the vibration that eventually hardens into matter. That is why every frequency eventually turns into reality. It is not superstition. It is cause and effect in energetic language. This is why I keep repeating. Frequency is not about feeling good. Feeling good can happen when your awareness is clear, yes, but it is only the side effect. If you build your spirituality on chasing emotions, you will always be trapped in reaction. But if you build it on cultivating awareness, you step into the role of creator. This is what makes the difference between someone who keeps chasing manifestations and someone who becomes a living embodiment of them. One is trying to patch the surface by forcing emotions. The other is adjusting the core frequency by clarifying awareness. One is chasing effects. The other is working at the level of cause. And the universe, being law-bound, cannot ignore cause. That is why frequency matters more than any ritual, affirmation, or action taken in isolation. If you do not change your repeated energetic signature, your reality remains the same, no matter how hard you try on the outside. But the moment you shift your awareness, the moment your frequency changes, the physical must eventually reflect it. It has no choice. This is the foundation. Until you understand frequency as awareness, nothing else I say will land. But once you grasp this, once you see that your perception is your frequency and your frequency is your future, you will understand why clinging to high vibes only is not just shallow, but dangerous. You will stop measuring yourself by moods and start measuring yourself by clarity. And that shift will open the door to the kind of manifestation that is not temporary, but permanent. Now that we've defined frequency as awareness, we can confront one of the most dangerous illusions in the spiritual community today. The idea that being high frequency means feeling good all the time. This is where the concept of toxic positivity comes into play. Because once you believe that your worth, your spirituality, or your ability to manifest depends on staying in a constant state of joy, you step into a mental prison that will eventually collapse on you. Here's why. When you tie frequency to emotion, you make your inner world fragile. You begin to judge every natural human feeling as evidence of failure. Sadness, wrong. Anger, wrong. Frustration, wrong. You teach your subconscious that anything less than constant happiness means something is broken. But remember what we already established. The subconscious doesn't argue. It accepts. It accepts labels. It accepts definitions. It accepts whatever you repeat as truth. So when you tell yourself that feeling low means something is wrong, you have already planted the seed of wrongness. That seed vibrates. That vibration repeats. And soon it becomes frequency. And frequency, by law, must manifest into reality. You end up creating struggle not because struggle was necessary, but because you declared it through your judgment. This is the subtle cruelty of toxic positivity. It convinces people they are failing simply for being human. It teaches them to suppress, deny, or run from emotions instead of integrating them. And ironically, the more they chase high vibes only, the more violently the lows crash when they inevitably arrive. This is not because the universe is punishing them, but because they have created an inner law that guarantees suffering. If I am not happy, I am failing. That law becomes self-fulfilling. The truth is that life is polarity. The universe itself is built on rhythm. Day turns to night, tides rise and fall, breaths expand and contract. There is no high without low, no joy without contrast, no clarity without confusion. To try and live only in one half of the polarity is to fight against the fundamental structure of existence. And when you fight against reality, reality will break you. Even the great spiritual teachers, the Buddhas, the prophets, the sages, did not walk around in permanent bliss. Read their stories. They faced despair, temptation, grief, anger. Their greatness did not come from avoiding the lows, but from transcending them. They did not label every shadow as failure. They recognized the shadow as part of the rhythm of life. And because they did not resist it, the shadow had no power over them. This is why I say again, frequency is not emotion. Feeling good is not the definition of high frequency. It is a side effect of awareness. When your awareness is clear, you will often feel lighter. But when your awareness is challenged, when life presents you with loss, grief, or struggle, you can still hold a high frequency. Not by forcing yourself to smile, but by refusing to label your pain as wrong. By seeing through the illusion that every low is a failure. By recognizing that even in the valley, you are still on the path. Let me make this practical. Imagine you wake up one day feeling heavy. Maybe your body aches. Maybe your heart is carrying sorrow. If your definition of high frequency is always feeling good, you immediately panic. You think, I'm low. I'm off. Something is wrong. My manifestations are ruined. That thought alone multiplies the weight. You spiral, and soon the day confirms your fear. Things go wrong, doors close, synchronicities vanish. Not because you were doomed, but because you created the doom by labeling your natural human state as failure. Now imagine the same morning, but with a different lens. You wake up heavy, but your definition of frequency is awareness. You notice the heaviness without labeling it wrong. You breathe with it. You allow it to pass like a cloud across the sky. You remain aware that your frequency is not the emotion, but the clarity with which you see through it. Suddenly, the weight does not become a curse. It becomes an experience. It teaches you presence. And when it passes, as all emotions do, your awareness remains intact. That is true high frequency. This is why toxic positivity is not spirituality. It is performance. It is pretending. It is the attempt to escape the very rhythm of life that makes growth possible. And it is dangerous, because it sets you up for the one thing you cannot avoid: failure by your own definition. When the standard is perfection, you will always fall short. And when you fall short, you will spiral into the very emotions you were trying to avoid. The cycle feeds itself endlessly. True spirituality is not about pretending to be happy every second of every day. It is about recognizing the rhythm of life and holding awareness steady through it all. It is about refusing to be thrown into chaos by the natural ebb and flow of emotion. It is about learning to stand at the center, neutral, grounded, awake. That neutrality is not apathy. It is strength. It is the place where you can experience the highs fully without clinging to them, and face the lows fully without drowning in them. So let's be clear. You do not need to feel good all the time to be high frequency. You do not need to run from sadness or fear. You only need to refuse the lie that emotions define your frequency. Your frequency is your awareness. And the moment you accept that truth, toxic positivity loses its hold on you. Now that we've broken apart the illusion that frequency is just emotion, we can move into a deeper truth. Mind and matter are not separate. They are the same energy, expressed at different rates of vibration. At first glance, this might sound abstract, even impossible, but once you sit with it, it becomes not only logical, but deeply empowering. Think about water. In one form, as steam, it is intangible. You can see it, but you can't hold it. In another form, as ice, it is dense and solid. You can grab it, feel it, even cut yourself on it. Yet steam and ice are not different substances. They are both water. The only difference is their rate of vibration. Steam vibrates fast, molecules moving quickly. Ice vibrates slow, molecules locked in structure. One energy, two expressions. In the same way, what we call mind and what we call matter are two expressions of the same energy. Mind is like steam, subtle, fluid, invisible to the hand, but powerful in its presence. Matter is like ice, dense, tangible, shaped into form. Manifestation, then, is nothing mystical. It is simply the process of mind slowing into density until it solidifies into matter. Reality itself is frozen imagination. This is why we say mind over matter. But it is not really mind over matter. It is mind as matter. The mind and the physical are not two domains fighting for dominance. They are two faces of the same coin, two vibrational states of the same underlying energy. When your awareness changes, when your repeated energetic signature shifts, the steam of consciousness begins to condense. Over time, that condensation crystallizes into the ice of physical reality. This is the law of mentalism, one of the first Hermetic principles. It tells us that the universe itself is mental, that consciousness is the root substance of everything. The physical plane is not separate from the mental plane. It is a projection of it, a reflection, a condensation. Just as your breath fogs up a window and leaves a pattern behind, your mind fogs up reality and leaves the imprint of your frequency. What you carry internally eventually projects externally. Now, it's important to pause here and draw a distinction. When I bring up ideas like the observer effect, the double-slit experiment, or quantum mechanics, I am not claiming that science has proven manifestation in the way many people say online. These are metaphors, illustrations, bridges between language. Quantum physics shows us that matter behaves differently depending on how it is observed, and we can use that as a mirror for the way awareness shapes reality. But the point is not to misuse science. It is to understand the principle. Perception influences manifestation because perception is frequency, and frequency crystallizes into form. Once you grasp this, you see why action alone cannot change your life. Reality is an effect. Matter is condensed mind. So trying to change reality without changing mind is like trying to fix a shadow without touching the object that casts it. You might stretch the shadow for a moment, but it will always return to its source. Until you shift the vibration of the cause, the effect will stubbornly remain the same. This is why so many people exhaust themselves trying to create change through sheer effort. They rearrange the surface of life, but the inner signature remains untouched. They wake up every day in the same state of awareness, carrying the same repeated energetic signature, and then wonder why their outer world repeats itself. The answer is simple. Frequency precedes reality. Mind precedes matter. Awareness precedes experience, and when you let this truth sink in, it shifts the way you approach everything. You stop trying to force the external. You stop begging reality to rearrange itself. You stop believing that more hustle, more grinding, more pushing is the way forward. Instead, you turn inward. You look at your awareness. You ask, what am I repeating? What signature am I carrying? What lens am I looking through? Because once you change that, the outer world has no choice but to change with it. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a law. Just as gravity does not negotiate, the laws of vibration and mentalism do not bend. You cannot jump off a building and beg gravity to spare you. You will hit the ground. In the same way, you cannot ignore the truth that every repeated frequency becomes reality. You can delay it, you can resist it, you can distract yourself from it, but eventually the ice will form, the mind will crystallize, and reality will reflect your awareness with perfect fidelity. When you understand this, life stops feeling random. You no longer see the universe as a roulette wheel of luck and misfortune. You begin to see the connection between what you are inside and what you encounter outside. You see the pattern between awareness and experience, between thought and circumstance, between imagination and form. And once you see it, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. So let's be clear. Frequency is not emotion. Frequency is awareness. And awareness is the root from which all matter grows. The sooner you accept that mind and matter are the same energy, the sooner you reclaim your power as creator. Once you understand that mind and matter are the same energy vibrating at different speeds, you can finally see why so many people struggle endlessly to change their lives. They focus all of their effort on the surface, on the effects, without ever touching the cause. Reality itself is an effect. Frequency is the cause. And as long as you keep rearranging the effects while leaving the cause untouched, nothing fundamentally changes. Think about it this way. If you look in a mirror and don't like your reflection, you don't reach out to smear the glass. You don't grab a marker and try to draw a new face on the surface. You know instinctively that the reflection is not the source. The reflection is only the effect. If you want to see something different in the mirror, you change yourself. You adjust the source, not the reflection. This is how reality works. But most people don't realize this. They think if they can just hustle harder, push longer, or act more forcefully, they will bend reality into place. And sometimes it looks like it works, briefly. But because they never addressed the inner frequency, the old signature soon returns. The pattern reasserts itself. The reflection snaps back. That's why so many feel trapped in cycles of progress and collapse, of temporary wins followed by the same old problems. They are treating the symptom, not the root. Let's use an everyday example: weight loss. Someone decides they want to lose weight. They go to the gym. They start counting calories. They push themselves to act like a fit person. But internally, they still identify as unfit. Their beliefs, their emotionally charged thoughts, their sense of self have not shifted. So what happens? When it rains, they skip the gym. When they're tired, they break the diet. When a craving comes, they cave. Why? Because the actions they're taking belong to the realm of effect, but their frequency, the cause, has not shifted. The subconscious still carries the repeated signature of "I am not fit." And so reality, being obedient to law, continues to mirror that frequency. Now imagine the same goal approached differently. Someone begins by changing their inner signature. They cultivate the awareness of a fit person. They adjust their beliefs, their focus, their identity. They stop saying, "I'm trying to lose weight," and start embodying, "I am fit." Their thoughts begin to align with that reality. Their emotions follow. Their actions now flow naturally, not as forced tasks, but as expressions of who they already are. Rain doesn't stop them. Cravings don't defeat them. Why? Because their cause has shifted. Their frequency now matches the reality they desire, and the effects adjust accordingly. The same principle applies to money. Many of us grew up around people who worked themselves to the bone, clocking long hours, saving every penny, trying desperately to get ahead. And yet money always seemed to slip away. Emergencies always appeared, and stress was constant. Why? Because they were trying to change their financial reality at the level of effect. They budgeted, they hustled, they sacrificed, but their underlying frequency remained one of lack. Their repeated energetic signature was, "There is never enough." And so no matter how much action they took, reality faithfully mirrored that cause. On the other hand, look at people who seem to attract wealth easily. It's not just luck. Their frequency, their awareness, their beliefs, their identity is aligned with abundance. They believe money flows to them. They identify as worthy of wealth. Their thoughts and emotions carry conviction, and so their actions, though often less exhausting, create greater results. They are not fighting against their own frequency. They are moving with it. This is the essence of the law of cause and effect. Reality is always the mirror. Your inner state is always the source. You cannot manipulate the reflection while ignoring the cause. You can't change an effect by changing an effect. Until you change the frequency, the awareness that generates reality, you will only recycle the same experiences under new disguises. This is why the spiritual community's obsession with acting as if can sometimes backfire. Acting has power only when it is supported by inner frequency. Pretending without shifting awareness is just performance. You can affirm all day, "I am abundant," but if the repeated energetic signature of your awareness is still lack, your reality will follow that. The words will be empty, the actions forced, and the results fleeting. But when your awareness shifts, when your frequency aligns, your actions become inevitable expressions of truth. They no longer feel like effort. They feel like flow. And this is where people often miss the point. Manifestation is not about forcing reality to give you something. It is about becoming the frequency of the reality you desire until reality has no choice but to reflect it. That shift is internal first, external second. Cause first, effect second. Always. Once you grasp this, your entire approach to life changes. You stop asking, "What do I need to do to make this happen?" And instead ask, "Who do I need to become to live this reality naturally?" That is the question that unlocks the door. Because when you shift the cause, the effect must follow. That is law. By now you can see why equating frequency with emotion is a trap. You've also seen why trying to change reality by manipulating the effects will never work. So what, then, does it actually mean to be high frequency? The truth may surprise you, because it has nothing to do with being happy all the time. To be high frequency means to hold a high level of awareness, a clear lens through which you perceive reality as it really is, not as your emotions momentarily paint it. And at the core of that clarity lies one word most people overlook: neutrality. High frequency is not about clinging to the highs or escaping the lows. It is about holding steady through both. Reality itself is polarity. Every wave has a crest and a trough. Every season has growth and decay. Every breath has an inhale and an exhale. This rhythm is the pulse of the universe, and you are not exempt from it. Trying to remain on the high side forever is not enlightenment. It is resistance. And resistance to reality is resistance to life itself. Neutrality is not apathy, nor is it numbness. Neutrality is balance. It is the state of awareness that recognizes both joy and sorrow without being swallowed by either. It is the midpoint, the still axis around which all motion revolves. Think of it like the eye of a hurricane. Winds rage all around, yet in the center there is calm. To be high frequency is not to eliminate the storm, but to anchor yourself in the eye, to see clearly while the rhythm of life unfolds around you. This is where the spiritual community's obsession with constant positivity becomes so damaging. When you try to maintain an unbroken state of happiness, you set yourself up for collapse. Because the moment life presents you with loss, stress, or pain, as it inevitably will, you interpret it as failure. And because you label it failure, your subconscious repeats that vibration until it becomes a frequency. Soon, your attempt to be high frequency actually drags you lower than before. This is why so many who preach positivity end up secretly exhausted, frustrated, or ashamed. They are fighting the rhythm instead of flowing with it. True high frequency does not deny the lows. It integrates them. It allows them to be what they are without judgment. It sees sadness as part of the rhythm, not a violation of it. It treats anger as a teacher, not a curse. It acknowledges fear without confusing it with identity. And because awareness holds steady, the emotions pass like clouds, leaving the sky of consciousness untouched. Think of the difference between being in a storm and watching a storm through a window. When you are caught inside it, every gust shakes you, every flash blinds you. But when you observe it from shelter, you see the whole pattern. You recognize the storm as temporary, as part of the weather, as something that will pass. That is the difference between low and high frequency. Low frequency gets swept away by the storm. High frequency sees the storm for what it is and remains centered in the awareness that it will pass. Neutrality also gives you strength that constant positivity never can. Because when you are neutral, you are not fragile. You are not dependent on circumstances staying perfect. You can lose a job, a relationship, or a plan. And though you may feel the sting, you do not collapse. Your awareness remains steady. You can grieve without turning grief into identity. You can fail without turning failure into fate. That steadiness is the mark of true high frequency. This is why I often say, high frequency is not perfection. It is perception. It is not about avoiding struggle, but about seeing through it. It is not about holding a smile while your world burns, but about holding awareness so steady that even when the fire comes, you remember who you are. This is the strength of neutrality. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing constant happiness, genuine joy becomes easier. Because you are no longer gripping it, no longer terrified of losing it. Joy can flow more freely. You allow yourself to feel the highs fully, without clinging, and you allow yourself to feel the lows fully, without despair. In this way, neutrality doesn't flatten life. It deepens it. It makes joy purer and sorrow more meaningful, because both are seen through the clear lens of awareness. So if you want to know what it means to live at a high frequency, don't look for people who are always smiling, always pretending everything is perfect. Look for those who carry calm through chaos, who can sit with pain without collapsing, who can celebrate without losing themselves in excess. Those are the ones who embody neutrality. Those are the ones whose awareness is clear. And that is the true definition of high frequency. Now that we've established that frequency is awareness, and that high frequency is not about constant happiness, but about clarity and neutrality, it's time to bring the concept down into something practical. Because the question everyone asks at this point is simple: how do I actually change my frequency? The answer lies in understanding what your frequency is comprised of. Think of your frequency as a structure, a composition, not just a vague vibration floating in the air. It is made of layers, and each layer either reinforces or disrupts the signal you send into reality. In my work, I call these layers the 5 levels of frequency: beliefs, emotionally charged thoughts, focus, identity, and conviction. Together, these 5 levels make up the repeated energetic signature that becomes your reality. Let's walk through them carefully, because each one holds the power to either align you with your desired reality or keep you trapped in your old one. First, beliefs. Beliefs are the roots of your frequency. They are the assumptions you carry about yourself, others, and the world. Most beliefs run so deep in the subconscious that you rarely question them. They operate silently, setting boundaries on what you think is possible. If you believe money is hard to make, that belief becomes part of your repeated energetic signature. If you believe love never lasts, that belief shapes the way relationships unfold. Beliefs are not just ideas. They are seeds that grow into the trees of your reality. To change your frequency, you must examine the soil of belief and plant seeds that match the life you want to live. Second, emotionally charged thoughts. These are not just passing ideas that drift through your mind. These are the thoughts that carry weight, the ones soaked in emotion, the ones that make your heart race or your stomach clench. A single thought without emotion is like a spark that fizzles out. But when thought is charged with strong feeling, fear, joy, anger, desire, it becomes powerful. It repeats itself, gains momentum, and eventually forms a frequency. This is why noticing your thought-emotion patterns is so crucial. If your most repeated emotionally charged thoughts are rooted in fear or lack, then your frequency mirrors that. To shift it, you must consciously redirect emotion into thoughts that align with your chosen reality. Third, focus. Focus is the steering wheel of awareness. What you give consistent attention to inevitably grows. The problem is that most people unconsciously focus on what they don't want. They obsess over problems, rehearse fears, or dwell on lack. And in doing so, they amplify those realities. Focus is not about ignoring life. It's about choosing where you place your awareness most often. Every time you return to your desired reality in thought, feeling, and attention, you are strengthening the frequency of that reality. Every time you spiral into the unwanted, you are strengthening that instead. Frequency follows focus. Fourth, identity. This is the layer most people overlook, yet it may be the most powerful of all. Identity is the I am statement you live from. It is the silent story you tell about who you are. If your identity is still wrapped in the old self, I am unlucky, I am always struggling, I am not good enough, then your frequency will always mirror that identity. You cannot live a reality that contradicts who you believe you are. Manifestation is not just about getting things, it is about becoming someone. When your identity shifts, everything else follows. This is why the most powerful change happens not when you try to add things to your life, but when you embody the version of yourself who already lives the reality you desire. And finally, conviction. Conviction is the emotional certainty that glues the other layers together. It is what turns belief into law, thought into momentum, focus into clarity, and identity into embodiment. Conviction is not forced willpower. It is the quiet knowing that this is already mine. It is the energy of inevitability, the vibration that carries no begging, no desperation, no fear. Conviction is what locks your frequency in place so deeply that reality cannot help but echo it back. Without conviction, your frequency flickers. With conviction, your frequency becomes magnetic. These 5 levels, beliefs, emotionally charged thoughts, focus, identity, conviction, make up the architecture of your frequency. Look at your life right now. The reality around you is nothing more than feedback, a mirror showing you the signature you have been repeating. If you want to know what your frequency is, you don't need a psychic. You just need to look at what surrounds you. That is the evidence. That is the feedback loop. And the beauty of it is that once you see the output, you can reverse engineer the input. But here is the mistake most people make. They think changing their diet, their clothes, their routine, or their Instagram feed will shift their reality. And while those changes can be nice, they don't alter the 5 levels of frequency. Drinking green smoothies does not align you with your dream life. Posting high vibes only memes does not alter your core awareness. If your beliefs, thoughts, focus, identity, and conviction remain the same, so will your reality. External actions can support, but they cannot replace the inner shift. This is why manifestation often feels so frustrating for people. They work so hard on the surface but neglect the source. They keep rearranging the mirror instead of adjusting the self. But once you turn your attention to the 5 levels, manifestation stops being a battle. It becomes natural. Because when your beliefs, thoughts, focus, identity, and conviction all align with your desired reality, your frequency is locked in. And when frequency is locked in, reality has no choice but to respond. So if you want to change your life, don't start by forcing the external. Start by examining these 5 levels. Ask yourself, what do I believe? What thoughts am I charging with emotion? Where is my focus most of the time? Who do I believe I am? And do I carry the conviction that it is already mine? The answers to those questions will tell you exactly why your life looks the way it does, and exactly how to shift it. We have walked through the structure of frequency, beliefs, emotionally charged thoughts, focus, identity, and conviction. But here's the reality. No matter how aligned you are, no matter how clear your awareness becomes, life will still bring you lows. Not because you are failing, but because this is the rhythm of the universe. The tide rises and falls. The seasons shift. Even stars expand and contract. The question is never whether lows will come. The question is, how will you handle them? This is where the true test of high frequency lies. Anyone can feel steady when circumstances are smooth. Anyone can glow when everything goes their way. But when the storm comes, when the deal falls through, when the relationship cracks, when the body aches. What then? This is the measure of frequency. High frequency is not the absence of lows, it is the mastery of them. I often say, being high frequency is how you handle the frequent lows, and the lows will be frequent. This is not pessimism, it is reality. Polarity demands balance. Every ascent carries a descent. Every expansion carries contraction. Pretending otherwise is spiritual denial. What sets you apart is not whether you avoid the lows, but whether you collapse into them or rise through them. Most people, when faced with struggle, are instantly swept away. Their emotions spike, their awareness contracts, and they forget everything they knew in moments of clarity. They get lost in the story of failure, of lack, of betrayal. And because emotion is energy in motion, when they let themselves be yanked around by every surge of feeling, they generate vibrations that quickly repeat into frequencies. Anger repeated becomes a frequency of anger. Despair repeated becomes a frequency of despair. And as always, every frequency becomes a reality. This is why emotional discipline is not a luxury. It is a necessity. I don't mean suppression. Suppression is just another trap, burying energy only for it to erupt later. Discipline is different. Discipline is the ability to feel fully without being swallowed. It is the art of acknowledging emotion, honoring it, but refusing to let it hijack your awareness. It is the strength of saying, "Yes, I feel this, but I am not this, and I will not build my frequency out of it." Think of Buddha under the Bodhi tree. The texts tell us he faced every demon of the underworld: temptation, fear, desire, despair. But those demons were not literal creatures clawing at him. They were frequencies. They were the vibrations of the human experience, surging to pull him into identification. His victory was not that he never felt them, but that he did not collapse into them. He recognized them, breathed through them, and allowed them to pass. That is the discipline of high frequency. Or think of your own life. Recall a time when everything seemed to go wrong at once. Maybe you lost a job, a relationship ended, bills piled up, your health faltered. In those moments, it feels like the universe itself is against you. But if you look deeper, you'll see that those lows were invitations. They were opportunities to practice awareness. They asked you, will you let this define you? Or will you hold your lens steady? Will you let this moment become your frequency? Or will you let your awareness remain larger than the experience? That choice is the essence of mastery. This is why neutrality is so powerful. When you can meet the lows without judgment, without labeling them as failure, they lose their grip. You stop feeding them with energy. You stop repeating them into frequencies. Instead, you observe, you learn, you integrate. The storm still rages, but you remain in the eye, present, aware, unshaken. That is high frequency. And here's the paradox. The more you learn to hold steady through the lows, the less destructive the lows become. They no longer spiral into identity. They no longer dictate your reality. Instead, they pass through you like waves, sometimes heavy, but never permanent. You feel them, but you do not become them. And because your awareness remains clear, your frequency stays aligned. This is the discipline that most people avoid. They want spirituality to be a shield that keeps them safe from ever feeling pain. But true spirituality is not escape. It is capacity. It is the expansion of awareness so wide that no emotion, no struggle, no low can shake your foundation. And that expansion is what makes you high frequency. So remember this: your lows are not proof that you've failed. They are proof that you are alive, that you are part of the rhythm of existence. The test is not to avoid them, but to hold steady within them. When you can do that, you stop being a victim of the cycle and start being a master of it. And that mastery is the difference between those who talk about high frequency and those who live it. Up to this point, we've spoken of frequency as awareness, of neutrality as strength, of the 5 levels as the architecture of your inner signature. But now we must go deeper into what it actually means to see clearly. Because to understand high frequency, you must first understand how profoundly limited ordinary perception really is. As human beings, we only see a tiny fraction of what actually exists. Physicists tell us that the visible light spectrum, the slice of electromagnetic waves our eyes can detect, is just 0.035% of reality. Think about that. You live your entire life interpreting reality through a lens that registers less than 1% of what is truly there. The rest, the infrared, the ultraviolet, the vast frequencies of energy and vibration that hum all around you, are invisible to your senses. Your perception is already confined before you even begin to interpret it. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of the world as illusion. The Hindus call it Maya. The Buddhists speak of the veil of ignorance. Mystics across cultures describe reality as a kind of dream or trick. It's not that nothing exists. It's that what we perceive is only a sliver of the whole, refracted, bent, and filtered through the limitations of our senses and the stories of our minds. We take the 0.035% we can see, project meaning onto it, and then act as if that is the entirety of reality. But it isn't. To be low frequency, then, is not about eating bad food or listening to loud music, as some people shallowly suggest. Low frequency means being trapped in the illusion, taking the 0.035% at face value, mistaking the fragment for the whole. It means building your life entirely on appearances, forgetting that appearances are not the source. And when you do that, you fall into confusion, suffering, and struggle. You become like someone walking with fogged-up glasses, bumping into walls, convinced the wall is reality, when in truth, it is just the distortion of your lens. To be high frequency, by contrast, is to expand your awareness beyond the illusion. It is to recognize that what you see is not all there is. It is to understand that the mechanics of the universe, the laws of vibration, cause and effect, polarity, rhythm, operate whether you perceive them or not. And once you anchor into those laws, once your awareness expands to include the unseen, you stop being fooled by appearances. You see reality for what it is, not just for how it looks. This is why Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and other masters could walk through chaos without being destroyed by it. Their awareness was not confined to the 0.035%. They perceived the deeper laws. They understood that what looked like loss, betrayal, or suffering in the moment was not the whole story. Their frequency was high, not because they avoided pain, but because they were not deceived by appearances. They could see through the illusion. You've experienced glimpses of this yourself. Think of a time when you thought something was the end, a breakup, a rejection, a failure, only to discover later that it led you exactly where you needed to be. In the moment, your limited perception labeled it wrong. But with hindsight, you saw the hidden order. That shift of perspective, that recognition that appearances can deceive, is what it feels like to break the illusion. High frequency is simply living in that expanded awareness consistently, without waiting for hindsight. It is knowing in the moment that what looks like loss may be a hidden doorway, that what feels like failure may be part of alignment, that what appears to be chaos is often the restructuring of reality to match your frequency. When you hold that awareness, you don't collapse into fear when things go wrong. You recognize that the illusion is just that, an illusion. And that recognition allows you to stay steady, to stay clear, to stay aligned. This is why neutrality and perception are inseparable. If you believe the illusion completely, every low will break you. But if you remember that what you see is only 0.035%, then even in the lowest valley, you can hold awareness. You can remind yourself, this is not the whole. There is more beyond what I can see. And in that remembrance, you hold high frequency, no matter how chaotic appearances may seem. So the question is not, how do I feel good all the time? The question is, how do I see clearly beyond the illusion? That is the work of awareness. That is the practice of high frequency. And that is how you step out of the prison of perception and into the freedom of reality. We've walked through the illusions, the laws, the structures, and the practices. We've seen why high vibes only is a trap, why frequency is not emotion but awareness, why cause must precede effect, why neutrality is strength, and why perception must expand beyond the illusion of 0.035%. But all of this knowledge, all of these insights, remain incomplete until they are declared, integrated, and lived. Awakening is not finished when you understand. It is finished when you embody. Declaration is the threshold where awareness becomes reality. It is not about standing on a stage, performing words for applause, or pretending to be powerful. True declaration is quiet, precise, and resonant. It is the inner moment when you stop waiting for permission, when you stop bargaining with life, when you stop apologizing for desire, and you simply own who you already are. It is not performance, it is resonance. Think of a seed planted in soil. For weeks, nothing seems to happen. Beneath the surface, roots are forming, connections are building, but to the eye, the soil looks unchanged. Then one morning, a shoot breaks through. That moment is declaration. The life hidden within becomes visible. In the same way, your declaration is the shoot breaking through. It is the first visible sign of the reality you've been aligning with beneath the surface. And just as the shoot does not appear through force but through inevitability, true declaration does not come from straining. It comes from alignment. You don't declare in order to become. You declare because you already are. You don't shout into the universe hoping to be heard. You speak because the universe has already heard you through your frequency. Declaration is not begging, it is claiming. It is the natural expression of conviction. This is why words spoken without coherence feel empty. You can say affirmations 1,000 times, but if your awareness, identity, and conviction are not aligned, they echo hollow. But when you declare from coherence, when your beliefs, thoughts, focus, identity, and conviction are unified, your words are not just sounds. They are signals. They are quantum commands. They ripple into reality with the inevitability of law. And this is where integration matters. Because declaration is not a one-time act. It is not a single phrase spoken once and forgotten. It is the continual choice to live from your chosen frequency, even when appearances contradict it. Integration means embodying your awareness day after day, returning to neutrality in the storm, holding your focus when distractions arise. reaffirming your identity when the old self tries to drag you back. Integration is the daily practice of being who you have already declared yourself to be. This is why declaration without integration collapses. It becomes another performance, another mask. But declaration with integration transforms. Because the moment you declare, "I am aligned with my chosen reality," and then live as if it is already true, reality has no choice but to mirror it. That is law. That is frequency. That is manifestation. So here we stand at the close of this journey. You now know that frequency is not about chasing highs or avoiding lows. It is not about forcing reality from the outside. It is about cultivating awareness, aligning the 5 levels, mastering neutrality, breaking the illusion, and declaring your chosen reality. The knowledge is here. The clarity is here. The question now is, will you live it? Take a breath with me now. Inhale slowly. Let your chest rise. Let your body fill with certainty. Exhale gently, releasing the grip of doubt. And whisper to yourself, not as a wish, not as a performance, but as truth. It is already done. Those words, spoken with coherence, collapse timelines faster than years of striving. They are not fantasy. They are frequency. They are the resonance that locks your awareness into the reality you have chosen. This is your moment of declaration. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. Declare it, live it, integrate it. And as you do, watch as reality reshapes itself around you with precision. Because the universe does not respond to effort. It responds to coherence. It responds to awareness. It responds to frequency. And your frequency is already shifting. So step forward. Own it. Live it. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you already are.